Hey, what's going on out there? I'm Sean Devine. Hope you all are doing well. Today's tutorial, we're going to be talking about phase and phase relationship and how this can affect your mix or your recorded tracks in a negative way if you're not aware of it. And so we want to talk about, in a simple way, what phase is and what it sounds like when it's happening, and then how we can fix it. All the way from the start, I can feel it in my heart, all the way from the start. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. I have a vector scope pulled up here, and then we also have a gain plugin that we're going to be utilizing a couple of different features there, flicking into mono, which this is a very effective way to identify phase problems. But let me go ahead and play back this vocal. And what this is it is two vocal takes where, I have matched the inflection. It's the same sort of delivery, but I just recorded them on top of each other. A lot of times vocals will be recorded in this way, but then sometimes they get to, the mixing process and the vocals have been stacked down into a stem. And then once there's phase issues, which there is in this track, it's a bigger problem because we don't have those individual tracks to work with. So I want you to keep an eye on the spatial analyzer over here, as well as the phase correlation meter, and listen very closely. And then we're going to talk about the phase issues that are inherently present here. Something in the air, I know you're there. All right, so my Grammy winning vocal takes here. A good example of a phase problem. You can see, first of all, that when we look at our spatial analyzer, normally you're going to have the signal kind of in this vertical plane where things are, kind of monocentric. And then we have, some stereo information on the outside. When I was playing this back, it's going this way in terms of, kind of the focus of the plane is left to right. And then there's very little information in terms of the mono or mids. So just something that visually will cue you on that. But even more obvious is the fact that our phase correlation down here is in the red. And so that tells us that we've got some phasing problems. Now, I'm going to go to mono, and I want you to listen closely again. And you're going to hear what we all know is the telltale sign of a phase issue. Something in the air, I know you're there. Okay, one more time. Something in the air, I know you're there. Okay, so I know you've all heard this. It's got that weird out of phase sort of result where not only did the signal get quieter, it got a lot weaker. So we lost a lot of the impact out of the two vocal takes. And not only that, but there is a little bit of a word at the beginning of the phrase. If you notice, when I take this out of mono, I say there's something. And when we flick it into mono, that there's disappears. So listen once again. This is with it in stereo. Something in the air. Okay, right? Now in mono. Something in the air. We completely lost that word because what that means is that was 180 degrees out of phase. So when that occurs, when you have that extreme amount of a phase issue, when we flick into mono, it will totally disappear. So again, an extreme example, but just to show you how much of an impact this can make in terms of mono compatibility and getting the most impact out of the signals when you're stacking, different sounds on top of each other. So if you have these minor timing differences when you're stacking signals on top of each other, we can get that phase. Also, in terms of miking things, you get different proximities in terms of where the mics are set up. And so they might be picking up signals between each other that causes phase. You hear about it a lot whenever you're talking about miking up drum kits. And you may be a producer and you may be stacking drum samples on top of each other. So this exact thing can happen, and it may be more subtle. It may not be as obvious or extreme, but you're going to lose some energy because that phase relationship is not where we need it to be. So how do we fix this? The easiest way to do this, and the way that's going to solve this most of the time, is to use a phase invert control, which is what we have on the gain here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the phase on the left side of the signal now. Now listen to this once we do that, and then keep an eye on the analyzer and the correlation. There's something in the air. I know you're there. Okay, so just visually right there, much more mid-centric with the stereo information. We've got a green correlation, good phase correlation there. And when we go to mono, let's listen and let's see if we lose that same word or if we get that weird phasey, chorusy kind of effect. There's something in the air. I know you're there. Okay, so in mono now, let's go back to the out of phase. Something in the air. There's something in the air. You hear how much of a difference we get with the impact and just the sound overall when we go down to mono? Pretty serious. So that's the easiest way to resolve phase issues is to, control the invert. A lot of preamps, my preamp, for instance, has an invert control directly on it. So if, somewhere in the miking, you need to, invert the phase there, you can. But, worst case scenario, once we get into the DAW, you can do that. Now, if you have the tracks separated, obviously it's easier to, fix phase relationships that are not going to be resolved just with a simple phase invert. We can do things like, move the timing of the track, align it a little bit differently so that we're not getting the phase. You can put a little bit of a delay on it, very, very fast delay just to change the timing in that way. If for whatever reason the phase invert method we talked about doesn't work for you, you can also take advantage of what is called a mid-side processing tool like Dr. MS. What this will do is it will take the signal and it will give us the ability to control the mid or the monocentric aspects of our track and the sides or the left and right, what makes up the stereo field. And we can adjust the width of those sides to remedy some of the issues that we're talking about in terms of phase. So for example, let me just reset some of these controls here. And let's just say that we wanted to, use Dr. MS to narrow the sides of this and give us less of a problem with the phasing we're hearing. Then I'm just going to go over to the side control and we're going to narrow that. Something in the air. I know you're there. The time is right. There's something in the air. I know you're there. The time is right. There's something in the air. I know you're there. The time is right. All right, so I just adjusted a couple of the parameters, the focus and the field here in Dr. MS. We narrowed the side a little bit, added a little bit of a delay just so that we're retaining some of that, pseudo stereo sort of sound there. But if we keep an eye on the analyzer over here, correlations in the green, we definitely had, the visual that we're used to there. So everything was fine. Now, if we go to mono, let's see if we lose that word or if we, lose a lot of the presence of the sound here. There's something in the air. Okay, so compared to the out of phase mono, something in the air. There's something in the air. So yeah, that's much closer to the effect that we were getting just flipping the phase. There's something in the air. Right? There's something in the air. Pretty close in mono. So again, using a mid-side processing tool, going to give you a lot of flexibility as well. So just a couple of different options for you guys if you're having some problems in terms of phase relationship and phase issues. Again, it's not always going to be this extreme when you're looking at a complete mixing session, or maybe you're putting together, a production and you have, lots of tracks that are maybe just slightly not ideal in terms of their phase relationship. that spread across a session, when you get down to final mix time, you're going to have some serious width issues when you start getting into the final mix as well as the mastering. And fixing it at that point is a lot more difficult. And sometimes, there's just nothing you can really do to, give a track the kind of width and spatial effect that you need if you've got a bunch of stuff that's just out of phase in terms of that final cohesive balance. So anyways, y'all, I hope this is helpful in terms of explaining, what phase is, what the issues are going to sound like when they are occurring in terms of bad phase relationship with your tracks, and also a couple of corrective ways to get this under control. If you have any questions about phase relationship and stereo imaging in your mixes or your productions, feel free to leave a comment below. If you learned anything in the video, please like, subscribe, and consider sharing. We'll talk to you soon.
Get another chance before you grow. Some things you gotta hold tight and others you better let go. These times will fade away. This life will pass you by.